300 days from today is CAT 24, typically scheduled on the last Sunday of November. If you are left with 300 days, let's look at what best we can do to improve our VARC, which means we may need to look at the past papers, the past sectionals, understand the question types. If we go specifically back to CAT 23, we know that there were 24 questions to be addressed in 40 minutes, with 16 RC questions based on 4 RCs and 8 verbal ability questions. The 8 verbal ability questions were summary questions, 2 of them, 2 parajumbles, 2 odd sentence question, and 2 para-completion questions. Now, if you consider all these questions, the verbal ability questions as well as your RC passages, one thing that stands out here, one skill set that stands out here is your ability to read and understand. That reading skill ends up being essential. And when you examine the reading skill or the reading component, what are the different requirements of the reading component? In the first place, your understanding or comprehension of what you read. Second, the ability to read quickly. That speed of reading is also very important because remember, you have limited time. And third, the understanding of the different question types, the logic involved there. What is the expectation of a question? How do you eliminate the options? And how do you arrive at the correct one? So that critical thought required to be able to understand questions and the options given there, that logic and reasoning required to understand how an RC progresses, how its main idea develops, how the argument is developed in the different paragraphs. These things are essential. Let's look at each one of these things. Building on comprehension requires guided practice of RCs. That is, you need to know how to read a paragraph, what sentences to focus on, how to put together key information of that paragraph to identify the important idea, how to connect all those important ideas and develop a thought flow and identify the argument of the RC. Key skills that you require here are 1. Deep focus and concentration. You know, that unbroken concentration that allows you to follow the development of thought very carefully. And the second is something very unique to reading, which is this ability to retain information as you read and to make connections with the information or ideas that appear later. How can you achieve these 2 skill sets and how can you build on them? 1 is solving at least 1 RC every day, developing that ability to focus and concentrate deeply, developing that argument and following that line of thought of the passage. So at least 1 RC every day, given your schedules, preferably in the morning, so that you can work well on your concentration and develop that. The second is, of course, long stretches of reading, long spells of reading, as in reading 10 to 20 pages in a book. Now that's what allows you to make those connections with information as you move along, to retain information and make subsequent connections. Reading a couple of articles from our recommended newspapers or websites can also be termed as long stretches of reading. Once you are comfortable enough to understand the diverse passages or articles that you read, diverse topics, different levels of language, then you begin to focus on speed. There is a current time that you have identified, a current duration that you've identified as required for you to read and understand. Please do not compromise on that. It might be any number of minutes that you currently require to read the typical 600 word length RC with 4 questions. But as you move ahead, once you're comfortable with this current time and that allows you to read the RC meaningfully, start reducing the time as you go ahead. You could reduce the time by, say, half a minute or a minute, as you go ahead. But take that slowly. Remember, while speed building is important, you cannot focus on speed and compromise on your comprehension. What is most important currently is beginning to understand what you're reading. Now comes that third aspect, which is understanding question types, understanding the required reasoning process, understanding the required approaches to solving different questions, which is where a well-curated courseware becomes useful. With our lectures, you will find that with each chapter, there is a certain concept or a certain question type that is discussed. And when you follow that up with the practice exercises that allow you to understand that particular concept thoroughly, and then you have your benchmarking tests, which also allow you to understand whether you've mastered the required skill sets of that chapter or that concept and that question type clearly. Now, this allows you to have a mastery-based approach wherein you master one particular chapter, one particular concept or question type, and then you move ahead. Remember, following that process helps you reduce inaccuracy. Also ensure that the comprehensive video solutions or text solutions are completely understood. A similar approach is applied to verbal ability. With verbal ability, remember that every question has a certain approach to it, a process that is believed to reduce inaccuracy. Now, following and solving questions as per that process is very important. So, when you repeat that process over and over, you will find that your inaccuracy comes down because you're taking a very systematic and methodical approach to solving these questions. Some months down the line, with verbal ability, it is important that you again get into consistent and regular practice, especially because a lot of these involve skill sets that we are not accustomed to. For example, parajumbles. Now, the human mind is not accustomed to looking at ideas presented in a scattered manner, which means you will have to make your minds comfortable with that approach of looking at ideas or sentences presented in a scattered manner and then learning to make those connections. So the more you solve in a consistent manner over a long period of time or a number of days, the more your mind will adapt to the right ways of looking at these questions and approaching them. In the months ahead, as you take different tests, the module test, the sectional test, the pre-SIMCATs, and of course the SIMCATs, not only is your speed going to increase, but you will find yourself getting greater insights into your strengths and weaknesses, and therefore you'll be able to develop strategies effectively. For those of you who find vocabulary a problem and feel the need to study vocabulary, you may want to identify 10 to 15 words every day from the different RCs that you do from your general reading, or even from the word list given to you. Note them down somewhere. So the process of noting down is to put together the different words that you've come across in order to revise. And that is very important. That revision of words is very important because remember, it is not difficult to understand the meaning of a word. It is difficult to retain that word or remember that word. So the most important part of vocabulary learning is noting down of words, recording them somewhere, documenting them somewhere, and revising them every now and then. It could be a weekly cyclical revision. Remember, with VARC, practicing in a consistent and regular manner is very important. That's the only way in which you can first of all cultivate your skill sets for reading. And that's the only way in which you can keep these skill sets going. Because the moment you stop reading or practicing of RCs regularly or verbal ability questions after they are taught to you, of course, you will find that the skill sets are not as sharp, which is why regular and consistent practice is most important. All the links that are essential to your CAT preparation are given in the description box below. Please feel free to raise any queries that you have. We will definitely get back to you. Thank you.